Hey there, Jake here from CVP. Today we are taking a look at this, Sony's new 85mm f1.4 G Master II, their latest E-mount prime lens. The original 85mm f1.4 has been a popular choice for photographers and videographers using E-mount cameras, and this new one is looking to bring it in line with their more modern camera systems and lenses. So let's take a look at how it performs. Sony were kind enough to send us this lens for a couple of days to check out and shoot with before the announcement. We managed to take it down to Caffeine and Machine down in Petersfield to film and photograph a Japanese car meet for a couple of hours. We also had another product with us, which we can't talk about just yet, but make sure to subscribe to see that video very soon. We shot with the 85mm across the A7R5 and Alpha 1, but mainly on the A7R5. The new lens handled incredibly well on these cameras. We shot some stills as well as video on and off our trusty RS4 gimbal. This lens paired with these high resolution cameras can produce some excellent looking results. You have so much detail and dynamic range to play with in both stills and video. It's a very clean and sharp lens, but we will take a bit more of a detailed look at exactly how it performs in our more controlled testing in a bit. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and if you want to buy anything you see in this video or any other filmmaking or photography gear, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. This new 85mm has slimmed down a little bit compared to its predecessor. It's a good bit smaller and also weighs about 20% less, dropping from 820 grams to about 640. On camera, it definitely does feel like it's a good bit lighter and smaller, and we had no trouble balancing it on our RS4 with an A7R5 with no extra counterweights or trickery. We even had a Polar Pro variable ND attached to the front 77mm filter thread on it as well. Otherwise though, they do look and feel quite similar, and both feature comparable dust and moisture resistant designs. This new lens has a declickable iris, 2 focus hold buttons, and features an iris lock which the older lens does not. This new lens features Sony's most up-to-date set of linear motors. This means that both autofocus speed and the manual focus experience are improved over the previous lens. Compared to the older lens, the focus feels much lighter, and it has a slightly shorter, more consistent focus throw. This would be good news for anyone wanting to use manual focus for video, but for most, the step up in autofocus performance will be the main improvement here. This new lens definitely feels snappier than the previous version, and one thing that we noticed was just how much quieter the new lens is when hunting for focus compared to the old one. We captured a little back-to-back example to show the difference on an FX3 in its video mode, with the old and new lens keeping as much in the test the same as we could. The new lens does look a touch faster than the previous version, but they both performed really well here when tracking SAM. We used the autofocus quite a lot when we were on the RS4 during our more creative shoot, and it worked really well on there. The 85mm f1.4 G Master II has been designed to cover full-frame Sony E-mount cameras, which means it should cover pretty much every camera that Sony offers. But we still wanted to see how much vignette this new lens has versus the older 85mm. We shot both lenses at f1.4 and f4, and close focus and infinity. These examples are with the in-camera profiles off and Lightroom correction off as well. At close focus, the new lens performs well with pretty even illumination across the frame. At infinity, we can see it vignetting a little more, but it's not hard vignette, just light fall off, which is fine. Stopping down does improve the illumination at infinity, but barely makes a difference at close focus. The older lens definitely has more light fall off towards the corners overall compared to the new lens, but it's quite similar at infinity. This is easily fixable across both cameras when shooting stills in post, and in video mode you will notice the vignetting less as you'll be cropping the top and bottom in 16:9 compared to 3:2, and you can enable in-camera illumination correction. Both lenses feature round 11 blade apertures, but they do render their out of focus areas slightly differently. Wide open, we can see that the shape across both lenses is incredibly similar. There is clear cat's eye shape as you move from the center of the frame to the corners. Our out of focus highlights have a little bit of texture on the new lens and have quite a defined outline with a slight green glow. The GM1 has similar shape across the frame and texture, but our highlights have much more of a green edge to them. This is thanks to the improved CA performance of the new 85mm. As you stop down, you can see the 11 blade aperture forming the shape of our highlights, but they look decently round, and at f2.8 the cat's eye shape is pretty much gone. Overall, the new 85mm does a nice job at rendering out of focus elements. The 85mm focal length, sharp performance and fast aperture allow you to really isolate your subject if you need to with some nice fall off. A lens's flare characteristic is a very subjective thing. For these examples, you grabbed a torch and blast it down the barrel of the lens, keeping the torch in the same position. The flares do look quite similar, but the GM2 seems like it has a little more resistance to veiling glare. They both look nice, but I do prefer the new lens's flare overall. Let's take a look at how the lenses perform in regards to transverse aberration. These example clips are with the internal correction profiles all turned on, which includes CA correction. Compared to the old lens, the new GM2 is much cleaner. Wide open, we can see very subtle purple-blue before our point of focus and green-yellow after it. The GM1 has far more overall aberration and colour. Moving on to our chart tests, we'll be able to see more of this overall improvement to chromatic aberration. We shot these chart tests on our Alpha 1 in its 3x2 stills mode at a range of apertures with in-camera corrections turned off for both lenses. One thing we noticed straight away is that the new lens is a touch wider than the older 85mm. Anyway, starting in the centre, we can see wide open that the GM2 resolves really well considering it's at f1.4. It's got minimal CA and resolves really well. Compared to the previous 85mm, we can see the older lens has much more CA and resolves far less wide open. The older version does improve as you stop down, but the new one is definitely better across the aperture range. Moving out to the corners, it's a similar story, but maybe a bit more extreme. The new 85mm drops off a little as you reach the edges of the frame, but it still performs really well wide open. As you stop down, performance improves with better contrast and resolving power. The older version looks far lower contrast with more CA wide open. This improves as you stop down, and at f4 they are decently comparable. So what can we take away from this? Well, the newer version resolves far better with less aberration. For lower resolution Sony cameras, this may be harder to tell, but on higher resolution ones like the A7R5 and Alpha 1, you will be able to tell a clear difference between these two lenses. As we saw in our creative testing, this means that this new lens can produce excellent clean, detailed imagery. The 85mm has a close focus of 80cm in manual focus and 85cm in autofocus, which is pretty standard for an 85mm lens. It's actually the same as the previous lens. It performs well here with only very slight CA, even with profiles turned off. Compared to the old one, we can see again that it's much cleaner. For our distortion examples, we shot video on our Alpha 1 with both in-camera lens corrections on and off. Starting with the new 85mm, we can see that it has a little bit of barrel with corrections off, which goes with the lens corrections on. The GM1 85mm has more pin cushion, which again is gone with corrections on. So with these lenses, distortion isn't something to really worry about, as even with profiles off, they perform really well. When it comes to breathing, the new 85mm does have some, but I would say it is better than the previous generation lens. However, we are pulling all the way through its focus range here, so these examples may look a bit more exaggerated than real-world pulls. And if you want to eliminate focus breathing completely, this new lens is compatible with cameras that have Sony's lens breathing compensation mode, where you can sacrifice a little bit of field of view for the breathing reduction. The new 85mm f1.4 G Master 2 is a solid update to an already popular lens. It features an updated design with a declickable aperture ring, improved manual focus and autofocus performance, and is lighter and smaller than the previous 85mm G Master. It can capture great, clean, detailed imagery across all of Sony's cameras, but really shines on their high megapixel bodies like the A7R5 and Alpha 1. I know some end users would have loved to have seen an f1.2 85mm, but for that extra bit of light, the lens would have been bigger, heavier, and more expensive. So I think 1.4 for the most part will be far more practical for most people. It's going to be priced at £1,835, which is around £335 more than the previous version, and for most, it will be worth spending the extra cash for the improved performance. Anyway, let us know what you think of this new lens, and if you have any further questions about it in the comments below. And if you like the video, please give it a like, and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. And thank you so much for watching.